Since the digital devices we are working on all have these differing capabilities to reproducing color, these limitations require that our playing field be marked out so that it contains the number and the tonalities of those colors that the device can display. Before you consider converting an image file from one color space to another, you need to be very clear why you are doing it. Converting an image from one space to another will change the data in the file and may cause from a minor to an enormous color shift or loss of color. I say may because it depends on the colors present in your image and what space you're converting them into. Most commonly, you would be converting an edited image from ProPhoto RGB to either Adobe RGB or sRGB, and occasionally CMYK. To do this with full knowledge of what will happen to the image, you need to do a soft proofing that will show the effects of both the color space conversion and which rendering intent will be best suited to the image. Rendering intents are discussed in detail in the previous course, but this is a really important point, so let's go over this again. There are 4 rendering intent options in Photoshop, while most other image editing programs have simplified down to 2. Perceptual and relative colorimetric rendering intents are those that most pertain to photography and continuous tone imagery, while absolute colorimetric and saturation have uses that are more specialized. So we're going to skip those 2 and focus on the 2 that are more common. Now, since rendering intents affect colors that are out of gamut, let's define the term once again. Gamut is basically what number of colors, what tonal range can a given device actually show you. This is going to include both our monitors and our printers. Now, when certain colors cannot be shown on a device, then those colors are said to be out of gamut. And that's what rendering intents deal with. What rendering intents do is move colors in your image if any color is out of gamut of the output device's ability to produce that color according to the output, or also called the destination profile of the device. For example, you have a photograph of a flower that has some deep and saturated yellow. When you send this image to your printer on gloss paper, some of the yellows in the image are beyond the capability of that paper printer ink combination to produce. Those colors get moved into the closest possible color that the paper can actually produce. This is done in concert with the paper profile that describes what, where, and how colors can be produced on that particular paper. If you look at that same image and prepare to send it to that very same printer, but this time you choose to use a matte fine art paper, chances are this paper's ability to reproduce those bright saturated yellows will be even further diminished. This paper's profile will then direct the out-of-gamut colors to the best possible printable place. Now, the difference between perceptual and relative colorimetric rendering is what happens to colors that are already in the printable range when those previously out-of-gamut colors get moved in. Let's take a closer look at that. In relative colorimetric rendering, all colors that were already in gamut stay where they are, and the previously out-of-gamut colors, as you can see here, these blinking colors, are going to be moved into the most logical place between these in-gamut colors. The positive side of this is there's no overall color shift in the image, but there's a downside as well. So let's take a look and see what happens here. So here we see our out-of-gamut colors, and they will get moved into places that make sense. In relative colorimetric rendering, all the colors that were already in gamut, and those were signified by those already in the circle, stay where they are. And again, the positive side of this is there's no color shift to the image. However, there's a downside as well, because if you have a lot of color that was out of gamut, these newly introduced colors can change the relationship between the colors, and that causes artifacts and sometimes noticeable banding in areas of fine gradations. Now, perceptual rendering does the same thing. It's going to take our same colors and bring them back into a printable area. However, they're going to do it differently because they're going to move the in-gamut colors to make a place for them so that the relationship between the previously out-of-gamut colors and the in-gamut colors stays the same. So again, here's our flashing out-of-gamut colors. Let's zoom in, and this time as the out-of-gamut colors move in, notice the other colors move out of the way so that they have a logical place. This maintains the relationship between those previously out-of-gamut colors and the in-gamut colors. So the pros and cons of perceptual rendering. First of all, benefit-wise, it does produce a natural color rendition. This is really good if you're dealing with skin tones. It's also a good choice to use generally when you have a lot of color out of gamut, and we're going to see how to determine that later when we're in Photoshop and Lightroom. The downside of perceptual rendering is that just a few pixels out of gamut can cause an overall tonal shift in the image, and again, we'll see this in our demonstration a little later. Now, there are some general guidelines. Perceptual for portraits, relative color metric for landscapes. But the real answer is to perform a soft proof on your calibrated and profiled monitor to see what will happen before you make the conversion. You may find that a particular printer-paper combination favors one over the other without any known reason. Soft proofing will show you this and save you time, money, and headaches by allowing you to see the effect of the output profile and the rendering intent before you actually go out to print.